When you have work done on your home, how do you know the tradesman can be trusted? Tonight we look at what can go wrong and find ways to avoid getting into trouble.
This is wrong. We should be doing something about this, and this shouldn't be happening in a modern civilised nation like Wales.
And we talk to the family whose lives were changed forever by shoddy workmanship.
I think we're still classed as an unlucky accident by many members of the public. That, oh, that was unlucky, that was not, you know, that was a real unfortunate accident. Well, no, it's another death is waiting to happen.
Sometimes the work done is not just shoddy, it's criminal. And occasionally builders' mistakes can end in heartbreaking tragedy.
Well, you can't think of her without smiling. She's very, very alive in our hearts and our thoughts. She was either skipping, or she was singing, or she was chatting. She hardly had any tantrums. She was a beautiful soul.
Talking with people, you see them sort of, when they first find out about what's happened to you, you see them compute in their minds, and they instantly relate to their own children, and you can see the look on their face as they contemplate losing that child.
This is Meg Burgess. On July the 26th, 2008, she was enjoying a fun Saturday morning at her home in Prestatyn with her mum Lindsay.
It was my birthday weekend, which puts a terrible twist on the whole thing. She could see it was a girly day, she wanted to be a part of it, and we went into the kitchen and made some sort of fuss over some cakes that we were going to make, and the whole reason we went out was to buy sugar for my cake.
Meg was 3 years old. She walked to a local shop with her mum and her 18-month-old brother Wilson, who was in a pushchair. 5 minutes from their home, they passed a house where a builder, George Collier, was at work.
He was on a digger, and they were picking the soil up and dropping it. George Collier was dropping the soil at the back of the wall. We went to the shop, and then on the way back we were chatting, and I got to the edge of the wall, which, bearing in mind, is 30 metres long, and turned round to beckon her on, because just like any child, she was in her own world, and I was pushing Wilson in the pram, and I stopped literally by the edge of the wall and turned round, and the whole wall collapsed on her. I pulled the bricks off her, and she wasn't coming out, and I could see that things were not good in the leg department, and took the bricks off her legs and pulled her out, assessed her, thought she'll never walk, and then assessed her body, thought she'll never have children, and then I assessed her face, and then you just know she's gone.
Dad Peter rushed to the scene and went with Meg in an ambulance. Lindsay stood on the pavement with the builders.
And they all looked at each other and they said, there's still reinforcements in the whole wall, we don't know what's happened. Turns out there was only 3 or 4.
2 small bars.
2 small bars, and one of them went over Meg. And everything was wrong with the wall, everything.
Meg was pronounced dead soon after arriving at Glencloyd Hospital in Bodilwyddan. In 2012, builder George Collier was jailed for 2 years for the bad workmanship which killed Meg. At his trial at Mould Crown Court, he had denied manslaughter by gross negligence. But the jury disagreed and found that he was responsible for the wall's collapse.
George Collier backfilled the wall, placed a large amount of soil behind it, something that the wall simply wasn't designed to take, and shortly after that work was completed, the wall unfortunately collapsed onto Meg Burgess.
I always had in my head that this was an accident. I didn't really understand what had happened. So when it came to the trial, it became more and more evident that this was highly preventable. In many, many ways, this was highly preventable, and I was shocked. Then it went to anger.
For Lindsay and Peter, that anger would soon turn to a burning desire for change. They picked up immediately on a lack of regulation in the domestic building industry.
I think if you consider that Mr. Collier can leave prison as things stand,
And do it again.
and then he can recommence, you know, immediately. Maybe with his groundwork, he'd need to renew his licence, his card for commercial sites. But in theory, he could start up and go out. He doesn't have to reprove his competency. There's no sort of test to reach. It's not like he's lost his driving licence and he needs to go back and retake it, as you would expect if you'd caused a death. That system isn't in place.
How does that compare to the other tradesmen that we let into our homes?
Right, so in the case of gas is probably the prime example, whereby you have a gas safe card and you're not, you know, it's illegal for you to work on somebody's gas pipes, gas fittings without that card. And of course then if there are any infringements, the Gas Safe Board are able to remove and rescind that card. Whereas, as I say, with as a builder, there's no such system in place.
The couple quickly found they had a key ally in the Welsh building industry.
At this moment, the situation is that you or anybody with no experience whatever, your granny, can set themselves up as a builder today and tomorrow be in someone's house making structural alterations. There's nothing to prevent that. And we don't think that's right, and the UK is actually the only country in the westernised world that doesn't regulate or licence their building domestic market in some way or other. I've suffered a loss of a child, and I think when I heard of the tragic death of young Meg, I thought, well, I know I had some sort of understanding of what their parents were going through. And yes, it did strike a chord deeply with me and moved me to do as much as I can to make sure, amend the situation, to make sure we've got a proper professional body in Wales.
Next month, FMB Cymru is bringing together a group of people, including representatives of the Welsh Government, to discuss how a licensing system for the estimated 5,000 domestic builders in Wales could be created.
The problem is finding which model would work best for Wales. And I think that's where our research programme would come in, is to find out, well, which model would work best in this country, given that the UK government seemed to be minded not to look to further regulation.
Many builders, such as Paul Tedder of Cardiff, support regulation.
If you had a licensing system, it would force the industry and all those operating in the industry to take the safety aspects of the building seriously. And I think it would improve the standard of the workmanship that we get, because it would eliminate the people who are out there trying to make a living in a field that they perhaps have no experience or training or understanding of.
Only gas-safe registered engineers can fit, fix or service a gas appliance. It's the law.
One option for regulation would see the creation of an official list of approved builders, similar to the Gas Safe Register, formerly the Corgi scheme.
And how many people actually know how competent their builder is? Because Mrs. Smith said they did a great job. And do you know what? This guy who sat in court, George Collier, he is just like one of those builders. He never wanted this to happen, but he took a risk.
Next month's meeting to discuss regulation of domestic builders in Wales will be the start of a long process. But many builders and campaigners feel licensing is the best way to beat the cowboys.
The tragic cases that we hear are where people have lost their life savings. People ring us up, the builder they used wasn't a member of the FMB, but they've got nowhere else to turn. What do I do about this? I've been ripped off. I've lost my life savings on a disastrous job. What can I do?
And for the Burgess family, who paid the highest price when their daughter Meg was killed by a dangerously built wall, change cannot come soon enough.
This is a little girl who had her whole life ahead of her, no illnesses. She was the happiest little girl, and there was just no need, and her life should count. This was a preventable incident, and I should have my daughter with me today.